Lots of folks. Great to see.
Hello, folks.
Oh, hi, Dustin.
Hello. Yeah, please go ahead. We'll get started in a minute. Add your name to the attendees list if you haven't already. Share the screen.
And while you're getting set up, just quick note, especially since this is a relatively newer group, there's an antitrust policy. See at the top of the screen for more information. So, thanks.
That reminds me, I wanted to talk about fixing some prices.
No jokes. If you are new, also please add your name in the agenda under welcome new friends. We'd like to have you introduce yourself briefly at the start of the meeting.
Yes, for the purposes of any lawyers listening to a recording of this, what I said previously was in fact a joke. A humorous observation, satire, not serious. Thank you.
All right, let's go and get started with introductions. So yeah, welcome anyone that's new. This is a working group about software repositories. We have a lot of folks from different places in the ecosystem. We sort of come together and work on similar problems here. Kevin, real quick, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kevin from NVIDIA. I'm one of the maintainers for the RPM and Debian repositories, the CUDA repo. I've in the past maintained packaging for the community for Memo, extras, as well as some package builds on the AUR. So I have interest in both a centralized as well as decentralized package repositories.
Awesome, welcome. And Patrick?
Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yeah, my name is Patrick Flynn. I work at ChainGuard. I'm sort of attending this because I'm working with Jason and Apu at Google on the Java side, trying to make sure that we can help out to get people signing Java artifacts.
Cool. Brad?
Hi, I'm Brad Beck. I work at Citi. I work on their Secure Software Factory initiative and also on the Secure Software Factory project under the Open SSF.
Cool, welcome. Caleb?
G'day, I'm Caleb. I work at Google on the open source security team with Dustin. I'm largely working on the package analysis project and updating the criticality score open SSF projects. Yeah, that's me.
Nils?
Hey, I'm one of the maintainers of Composer, the PHP package manager, and packages.org, the open source package registry for PHP, and I work for Private Packagist, our paid product for paid repository for businesses. And yeah, curious to hear what's going on here.
Cool. Drew?
I'm Drew Davidson. I'm a professor at the University of Kansas. We had gotten involved in OpenSSF kind of at the recommendation of the Google open source security team, and initially had joined the Identifying Security Threats working group along with my colleague Lorenzo De Carli. And one of the outcomes from that group was so we've done this previous work on package security and sort of studying package ecosystems, which is work that we'd like to continue doing. So it seemed like this would be a good group for us. We are also trying to get together a little survey of the problems that happen in security reports, like essentially when someone mentions that there's a vulnerability in a package and sort of what the best practices are for that, and especially what behavior crosses the line. So that's kind of our whole deal.
Cool, welcome. Sean?
I'm Sean Lowry. I'm team lead for languages at Active State. We actively mirror a bunch of upstream software repositories, and so we're keenly interested in the efforts to help make them secure.
Cool. And Zufei?
Yeah, I'm from the JFrog for the Persea project. Yeah, we want to build the security supply chain. Yeah, that's all.
All right, anybody else?
Hi, this is Jesse Sanford. I added my my info a little bit late because I'm on a mobile, but I'm working for Autodesk, and I'm contributing some SIG-Store cosign validation checks to Crossplane, and I was invited to join this meeting because Crossplane has its own package management, and we're going to be starting to implement some of that.
Very cool. Welcome. Anybody else?
Yeah, my name is Jason Lutz, and I'm with ChainGuard, and I'll be a solution architect here at ChainGuard. Just joined the organization.
Welcome. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so roughly how this will work, we'll go over action items from our last meeting real quick. We have a full agenda, so I'm going to ask everyone that has something on the agenda, just please be mindful of time so we can get to everything. Real quick on the action items. First thing, our EMEA-friendly meeting, which will take place in 2 weeks from now. We're going to shift the time slightly more friendly to folks in the US and elsewhere. So there's a poll. Please make sure I'll highlight that in this comment here. There's a form. I also shared it in the Slack. Please just fill that out. There's a couple times in there that we're going to shift to. Also, I would externalize a doc on testing SIG-Store and Tough clients. That doc is now available. That's here. You're welcome to follow that, and I'll probably want to discuss that in the follow-up meeting. I will also share that link out more widely as well. We did that one. Brandon, real quick, do you have any update on this?
Yeah, I guess just a quick update. Well, more of a thanks for those that added in. We have a couple new columns. I'll socialize this a little bit more. KubeCon next week. I think the plan after that is we'll do the blog post, extend this a little bit further, and then kind of start to condense and figure out, more granular rows, so it's easier to compare.
Okay. Awesome, great. And so just a little context, we have a survey going of sort of different ecosystems. I will try to pull together a link for that for new folks here. Thank you, Brandon, that's awesome. Azra's not here. I haven't seen anything about this, but I would still like to get this sort of cleaned up and shared with everyone, so we'll work on that. Miles is also cannot make it today, so he's not here. And Zach, I think, resolve these 2 action items, so I think we're good. Is there anything I'm missing? Okay, chugging right along. Jacques, over to you.
Yeah, g'day. So 2 folks, Mislav and Lorenzo, raised in the general channel of the OpenSSF Slack that it would be nice if they could get their hands on known malicious packages without a bunch of hoopla and trouble. It seems like a really good match for the existing proposal to collect data about different repository systems. Like they seem like peanut butter and chocolate, as the saying goes. So I wanted to bring that to folks' attention. I'm not sure what the next action item is. I can see that Sean has a demo coming up where they've sort of made a first stab at this, given that Active State does in fact collect a lot of source code and therefore they still have it when it gets yanked. But I wanted to bring it to people's attention that this is something that's been thought of, and I think it's a great initiative that we should put our shoulder behind.
Do we have any sense of like what the most useful format is? And I see Caleb's hand up, and I know Caleb might have an answer to this, so I'll hand it right over to Caleb.
I don't actually have an answer to the question you were trying to ask. I was just going to, because the comment has been added here about the blog post and our package analysis project. We have thought about doing this in the future, particularly, and either attaching it to the package analysis project or the package feeds project. Like there's a kind of scale to making sure we can store everything and make it accessible. But it is something that we're very much interested in as well. But like we're in a position with the projects we have to be able to do that. And certainly doing it in a central place so that other people can build on it is I think a valuable idea as well.
I wanted to add, I think there was an issue for APAC, and a couple of us are kind of looking at it. That was kind of looking more at keeping track of all the different compromises. So we're creating a data model for that. So I'm wondering whether you would see this as part of just general compromises, or would it be a separate thing that's worth keeping a separate database for?
I think it's separate. The idea here is to collect source code for packages that are known to be malicious so that they can be studied by researchers in particular. Because at the moment, they have to do some pretty clever stuff to get their hands on it. If you read the Backstabbers Knife Collection, they have a whole section about the kind of gymnastics they had to perform to collect a data set. It was impressive, but it's a pity that they had to.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think first priority here is just making sure we retain these packages and don't, shred them off the face of the earth. And then everything after that is bonus, just because I think the status quo is if we find a package to be malicious, we want to eradicate all traces of it. And so having policies in place where we don't do that is to me the biggest win, and format, et cetera, can be hashed out later.
I see Drew has a hand.
Yeah, I mean, just like, I guess representing our own academic research interests here, I'll say that just in terms of format, we'd like to see as much metadata preserved as possible as well. We're already interested in things like, what is the popularity of packages at the time they were deemed malicious? What was the name of the package? Was the description similar to a legitimate package that continues to exist on the repository? So in terms of format, like a snapshot of exactly the data that NPM kept at the time of at the time of takedown would be ideal.
David, and then I think maybe we want to move on, but go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. The Backstabber's Knife Collection folks actually do make their collection available to others, but you basically have to provide them some assurance that you're on the good guy set. You're going to use it to analyze and prevent as opposed to attack others. But I very much agree with, I think, with Jacques' earlier point. We've got to find a way to not destroy all traces, because we need those traces for later analysis to prevent it from occurring again. Thanks.
Anything else real quick here? Okay, I'm gonna hand it to Sean. I think this is relevant. So let's, Sean, do you have a demo for us?
Yeah, so in response to the questions that were posed on the general channel the other day, I realized that ActiveState has been actively mirroring a number of upstream repositories for quite some time. We mirror on a daily basis. So anything that comes and goes within 4 hours, we may miss, but we generally tend to get everything that sticks around for more than 24 hours. So we are mirroring currently PyPI, CPAN, RubyGems, and Packagist. And we are going to start shortly mirroring NPM as well. And I just figured it would be, as we have all this stuff, we tend to remove it from our catalog so that you can't actually add it into projects that you build on the ActiveState platform. But we still keep the source code around, and we still keep the metadata around. It's just not actively available to use in builds. So what I decided to do was use some of our public APIs to give people access to these packages and get access to our mirror. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Is that okay if I switch over?
Yeah, please do. I'm not sure who the host is. We can, yeah, there we go. Perfect.
It worked. Okay, so there's a GitHub repo here. I will share the link in the chat. So this is our tool that I've called the Malware Archivist. And it's literally there to use as an API tool to grab stuff from our repos. Some of the APIs actually require authentication, and the easiest way to do that is to use our command line tool. And so this is kind of built with our command line tool in mind. So without further ado, yeah, you can all go and read me there. This is the repo. It's very simple. It doesn't do a whole bunch more than just literally giving you access to download stuff. But what it does, I'm just going to use our command line tool to activate the virtual environment. And this works on Mac, Linux, and Windows. And now you can just basically use the tool MA. So let's pick a recent one on PyPI was Noblesse, I think. So we're going to say ecosystem Python name less. I think that's how they spelled it. And it'll tell you which versions we have in our catalog. And then you can say version 6. Goes authenticating, it's pre-authenticated, and then it's downloaded it. There it is. I have a copy of Noblesse 006. Some other things that our APIs can do that this tool doesn't currently do is display things like metadata, like authors and more repository information and the description and publishing date and things like that. So those are things that can be added in fairly easily. And I will work on trying to get those in. But yeah, just as a first step, if you need access to anything that's been published in the last 3 or 4 years from PyPI and CPAN, and probably the last year, 18 months, RubyGems and Packagist that's been removed from the upstream repos, we have a copy of it. There you go. Questions?
Super. Super cool. Yeah, so this is mostly just pulling down from a mirror. You kind of have to know the name in advance. There's no sort of sense that like this
You
was
do.
a
There's
known
no
malicious thing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no browsing yet at the moment. We're actively adding that kind of capability to our API as well. So soon-ish, you will be able to also say, okay, well, please list me the malware that you have removed.
As helpful as this sounds for...
Go ahead.
As helpful as this sounds for this particular use case with malware, I'm a bit curious, have you considered the legal implications of the fact that the majority of takedowns is actually for legal reasons, and you're still making these packages available?
Yeah, that's part of the reason that we've said in the documentation there that one of the things we're going to do is lock down these APIs so that one, it's only authenticated users who can use it, and two, we'll be restricting access to things that were publicly available as malware only.
Okay, I see. Thanks.
Yeah, we just need to hook up to APIs internally to make sure that we've got, okay, this was taken down because it was malware, and now it's available via the API.
Yeah, makes sense.
This is great.
I'm sorry, Dustin, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to quickly say, like, in reality, PyPI doesn't actually disappear any files. So like this one, for example, does exist on disk somewhere that I could give you a link to. It's not easily discoverable, but I think, and I'm curious if that's the case for some of the other ecosystems as well. I don't know if anyone could really answer that or has enough knowledge across them, but.
I mean, I'll say, kind of echoing the previous points, that it is quite difficult in my experience to get track of NPM packages that have been taken down. So I can only speak to that repository. And then my question, I guess, to keep the mic is, a lot of repositories keep track of these like usage statistics, weekly downloads, that kind of thing. Do you know if any of that data is scraped? It may not even be, I suppose, available from the source repo.
We tend to keep metadata that doesn't change over time about these things, but we are starting to track metadata that does change over time. So for example, CVEs. So yeah, when we do our initial ingestion, we don't currently track things like usage or popularity, but we will take any metadata that was available at the time of publishing.
Okay, yeah, I'll put in my vote to just say that this is super useful, and that would also be very useful.
Okay. Well, please feel free to raise an issue on the GitHub repo if you would like the feature.
Sounds good.
Thanks. We dropped a link to the repo in the notes, by the way.
Thanks.
Cool. All right, moving on. I added something to the agenda because, let me share my screen again. I think probably most folks have seen there is some recent discussion about NPM and takeovers of custom domains and things like that, gaining access to accounts. And so I was hoping NPM folks would come be able to join us and have participate in this discussion, but I kind of just get folks' thoughts a little bit for a couple of minutes on what could actually be done to counter a domain expiry attack. And for anyone not familiar, what happened is, a user has a custom domain, that domain expires, an attacker registers the domain, and they're able to password reset and gain access to the account. Aside from like running a registrar or something that has like immediate access to the status of every domain and insight into who owns it and if the ownership is transferred. I'm curious like what other ecosystems have done here. I can talk about some things that PyPI has done, but I kind of want to open the floor up to anyone else. Yeah, Eddie.
Yeah, this is so in the Go world, we have lots of vanity domains that are just pointing to a GitHub repo redirect, and we've talked about this a few times on the Kubernetes project, and it's kind of scary. I don't know if we have any actual mitigations in place other than we vendor all of our dependencies and make sure all the checksums match before we do anything. But yeah, that's definitely come up a few times in the Kubernetes world.
Yeah, we've been talking about this a lot as well. And we have domain-based sort of validation of these namespaces, but Maven Central's been around now for like 15 years or something, right? So we know a certain amount of these have expired, right? And we definitely want to revalidate, those namespaces and thinking about how to approach that, like deactivating, making re-registration happen, prevent the kind of attacks. The other thing though is just kind of understanding the impact a little bit, right? Like this is something that's old with an expired domain. Like how many things are really dependent upon that, right? How to better understand like what the impact of these sort of forgotten namespaces are, what dependents are actually using open-ended version ranges or latest, right? So that this attack versus specifying a particular version, right, is a build. So there's kind of some more research we want to do too to definitely validate domains and look at this, but also kind of see what are really the potential impacts in our ecosystem. So
David?
Just real quick, somebody said Vandy domains, and I see the note says custom domains. I appreciate the switch over, because speaking of someone who uses a custom domain routinely, and I have switched my mail providers. I have had 3 different mail providers, so there are advantages to the custom domains. You can actually control it and that sort of stuff. So for those of us who are doing it, we have a reason for it. But I do agree with the problem. I would like, it seems to me there's ways to detect it, but yeah, I think the fundamental attack, I think, is basically password resets and taking over an account because it seems to be a domain name and it's switched over. Am I missing it? Is there another attack besides either the password reset, or I point to documentation, this is the official homepage of the project, and whoops, I took it over? Is there another attack that I'm missing besides those 2?
No, I think the main attack is taking over the account of a maintainer and being able to publish new versions or compromised versions. And yeah, I want to just like be clear that like using a custom domain is a valid use case. I don't think we want to just say get rid of all custom domains. That's definitely not what I'm proposing. I see Jacques with his hand up.
Yeah, I wonder whether this is a case where 2-factor authentication gives us a reasonable defense against that kind of. This is a resurrection attack, right? Like it falls into that general class, the same as usernames that have been deleted or package names that have been deleted and get reused. So it feels as though 2-factor authentication is, to me, off the top of my head, the best defense, insofar as the odds that somebody is able to defeat the second factor as well as take over the domain are slim, not 0, because people are clever, but slim.
100% agree the 2FA would solve this. The reality is that most, majority are not. So in the meantime, like, additional protections maybe.
In the meantime, I guess my best guess is that we do the thing that I sort of keep harping on about, which is trying to make the attacker move in the open. This to me sort of raises the question of whether domain names changing wants to become something that we write into a transparency log as a security critical event, in the same way that later on we're going to be talking about a proposal where you have a package type and you talk about events that happen to packages, such as pushes and yanks and so forth, so that people can see the log that's public. And I wonder now whether change of domain ownership falls into that category.
If we had insight into it, right? Like maybe it could be. Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, the other attack vector, this applies a little bit to Central, but I suspect notionally to others as well. URLs that are contained by the content, the metadata. So in Maven, historical POMs might refer to other repositories that were expired. We went through this fire drill last year. Jonathan Leach was doing some work there. And so we had to go assess all of the repositories that were referenced by all the POMs in Central. And we found a couple. I own a couple domains now to protect the world from those types of attacks. But I suspect similar things might exist in NPM install scripts and other types of references that we might want to think outside of just the email address of the publisher, as an example.
I'll just quickly add that one thing PyPI does here to sort of help, but obviously not fully protect folks against this. We try to send a fair amount of emails to maintainers, when different activities and events happen. And if in any case a email bounces, most likely due to the MX record going away, we just unverify that email address, and it's no longer a valid avenue for password resets until it's logged in and re-verified via a different email address. So I would encourage everyone to do that, but I don't think that's sufficient to protect against every possible domain expiry, and it sort of depends on us sending an email and the time between the expiry and when an attacker might come along and decide that they want the domain. Cool. This has been helpful. Any other discussion here?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Who noted that earlier that you checked for the MX records?
I was not saying that that it does happen. I was saying that it's something that might be considered.
Sorry.
I think from a package scanning point of view, there's opportunities here in terms of correlating the metadata on domains of the maintainers against when new packages are published, and being able to detect like substantial changes to the DNS, or either the name servers or the DNS records, I suppose, as a signal for like, is this malicious or not?
I don't know if this is something you've already talked about, but in some, at least in my worldview, there's a lot of things that are secured using PGP signatures, often detached signatures. I know some of these formats already support that, but there, of course, it's tricky because you have a lot of individuals, and then you have to accept those signatures and kind of track to see, is this really that person? And it's difficult to do that. However, with chain of trust, if you can kind of trust one person and that person trusts someone else, that's another thing that could be checked in addition to, domains or email addresses or something like that.
I think our next demo probably would be able to speak to that a little bit, but if there's any other questions or comments on domain expiries.
I do have one more briefly. I have mulled around the idea, and this is really for the very, very tiny packages like for each. It might be good to have some organization, some person being able to operate as the second eyeball and just not allow publishing without somebody else checking, and a group of others, because there's a whole lot of really, really tiny NPM. It's a specific, especially in NPM, a lot of tiny packages almost never change, but if they get subverted, it's a bad day for a lot of people. So this is a case where change is unlikely, and when changes occur, it's reasonable to delay a little bit. A different countermeasure.
Yeah, maybe an interesting metric to take into criticality and that kind of thing, or just analysis of new releases. Okay, I'd like to move on to Jason's demo, because I think Kevin brought up signing, and I think this is probably relevant. So yeah, Jason, over to you.
Sure. I'm not sure how interesting the demo is for people not in the Maven Java ecosystem, but I'll describe a bit about what's been done. So it really is just a starting point. It is fully functional. I've been deploying stuff to Maven Central for a couple days with it. It is trying to replace all of the signing capabilities for Maven. So it will do the PGP signatures, has a Java implementation that will read the first key in the key ring and do the signing. It can use the agent if you want. You can store armored private keys in a secret manager if you're doing it in AWS, for example. So it is producing all of the SIG-Store signatures. It emits the public bits and the signature to the repository. I pasted a link to what some of the output looks like. And it's just a starting point. So we may change the layout. The names of the files may change. A couple things that popped up in talking with people. Maybe a simple piece of metadata with a version of what the current layout structure is, so that if tools have to go back and crawl over the repository, and we've ended up changing like the extensions on files or what files are actually generated. Now, say we do this for 3 months, a lot of projects use it, and then we change how things are generated, just so that there is information there for tools to go back and correct what they've done. Another discussion came up about what the relationship would be between an artifact and the signing certificate that's used. I think there was a notion at some point that that might be one-to-one. That is not what I'm doing right now. So I basically cache the key pair and the signing certificate for the session in Maven, so that someone's not bouncing out to OIDC like 50 times while they're doing a release. But again, how that actually works in practice may change. So everything, all of the ephemeral stuff, nothing is touching disk. But again, people may review this plugin, things might get changed. It would be nice to get some people trying it. Trino, Quarkus, and the JUnit folks have agreed to give it a whirl to try it. And I have a tool that will mechanically change projects' palms to switch it on to try and ease the adoption. And it's currently working in a mode to turn off the existing PGP signature mechanism and using it all in one place. And that's configurable, but whether that's appealing to people or not remains to be seen. So that's a little bit of the background. So I'm happy to run the demo. I think it will only take a couple minutes, but I leave it to you, Dustin. If you have other things you want to do or you want me to try and run it quickly, is fine with me.
Yeah, sure. Let's do a quick demo.
All right. All right, that may be relatively small, but hopefully this should be big enough. So this is just a simple description of a Maven project. It's just basically telling the existing PGP signing mechanism to go away and shut itself off. And this plugin will do the PGP signing along with the SIG-Store signing. So not terribly exciting. But it goes through the normal Maven release process that most people are familiar with. It gets to the signing part, it jumps out to the OIDC provider. And at this point, it caches everything so that it doesn't have to sign or jump out to OIDC. In this case, probably 8 times if it had to. That should all be making its way up to oss.sonotype.org. So
Jason, while that's running, oh, sorry, while that's running, what's the signing identity that it supports here?
Sorry, say that again.
What OIDC identity is being used here, or what is it support?
That was my GitHub.
Oh, okay.
So that should have made its way up to oss.sonotype.org. That's their validation process will kick in. And again, the layout that I have there is doing all of the SIG-Store public keys or the Fulcio public cert, the signature and then all of the PGP signatures that are required by Maven Central currently. And I think it works fine in a hybrid mode as more projects start using SigStore. The PGP signatures can be shed, and that's something that will be sorted out in the community, but it works perfectly fine as it is right now, so that projects could start using it. And that worked. So that is, so you can see it's rather lengthy because it basically is signing everything that SigStore also did as well. But it's functional, passes the validation. It can be released into Maven Central, and there's probably some details to work out with Brian and Jason and Joel. But if we figure out what the extension should be, how things can live together until PGP is shed, it means that in relatively short order, we can start signing things in any Maven project. And I believe that Apu, Patrick, and I would be able to get a Gradle plugin probably working in a week as well. And that is it.
Super cool. Any questions for Jason? Sterling?
Hey, Jason. Sterling from Gradle here. Does your plugin just handle the publishing side? Do you have anything on the consuming side yet?
No, so that is on our list. I started making a verifier yesterday. So I think that would be part of the tools that are created in the project that Apu's working on.
Yeah.
And then that could be used in repository manager plugins or the build tools themselves to do validation in real time, because that's not something that's I know very few people who actually use the PGP signatures. So it'd be nice if it was actually, if the verification was actually built into the downloading mechanism by default.
Mm-hmm.
Jason?
Yeah, thanks. This is awesome, by the way. Thanks. I know that Damien and Hervé have some verifier code that they have a PR against one of the. I can track it down. I think it's on the SigStore Maven plugin or something similar. You may be able to reuse as well. They did some validation logic using the material from SigStore to that validation.
Cool. Yeah, I think a verifier would be relatively simple. I use Cosign for checking it now, but if it could be built in a small library and the work that Apu's doing, then we can use it everywhere.
Anything else for Jason? Cool. Let's move on to Eddie and a package entry type in Recore.
Yeah, so this came out of working with Dustin and the PSF folks last week at PyCon on integrating SigStore with PyPI. We realized that all these awesome people are going to be adding packages to Recore and SigStore, and we probably don't want to create a different package type for every single package manager out there. So Zach proposed the idea of having a generic package type inside of Recore and SigStore. And there's an issue open to kind of get this conversation started and find out what folks would like in there. The original thing we talked about was using the PURL specs because it has the qualifiers at the end. So you can just about address every use case that I could think of, but would love folks to chime in and give thoughts on that.
Yeah, Brian?
You read my mind, so +1 on the Perl. Let's not create another set of, another taxonomy.
Chuck?
Yes, I'm against creating new taxonomies. One thing I'd say is this is part of the origin story for this group, is coming to such an agreement on Recore types. It's like one of the things I had in mind when I started being part of the informal coalescence that has since formed into this beautiful flower. One thing I would ask to bear in mind is that being able to search on particular fields is going to be extremely useful. So this is something that we've thought about when we worked on the RubyGems prototype. At the moment, the attack case that we think about is somebody spams 1 billion signatures for that SHA, and then as soon as somebody tries to load the page or install it, then it downloads all these things and churns through them, and you get these denial of service attacks. So being able to narrow down by particular fields will help a lot, because ostensibly only the owners should be able to do a push for a particular package at a particular version. That would be very helpful to us. So yes to PORL as a feedstock for like taxonomy. I'm not convinced that literally the URLs will be as helpful as being able to search by fields against the Recall API.
That sounds like a strong argument for identity providers in the package indices, but I'll leave that for later.
Yeah, that's definitely something we can work in, is that the search through the different fields. And right now it's just a post of a search body, and you can basically, it's free-form map JSON in there. So we can index on the PRL or whatever we figure out for that. So yeah, noted. If you could drop that note in the thread too, the GitHub issue, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I would like
we
to
had discussed. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna play devil's advocate or customer obsession. How do you expect someone to use it across different ecosystems? And if in as much as the format should stay the same so that someone can use it across the different ecosystems, we should totally make it standardized and make that easy. And any place we're including a standard just so that we can have it, and we don't know why someone will want to, we should consider the option of just not and letting different ecosystems do whatever feels natural to them. There are costs both ways. We should think about it.
May I jump in on that one? So I am pretty sure that if we don't have some sort of uniform package spec, and ideally if you just some uniform description of a lifecycle of a package that gets recorded in the transparency log, that my colleagues in InfoSec and AppSec will find me and beat me to a pulp. They do not want to deal with a bunch of different monitoring systems with a bunch of different corner cases. If at all, it can be helped. That being said, your point about not having a standard for standard's sake is true. One of the guiding principles of this group has always been that it is not a governing body or a standards body. Like we can publish what we think people should do, but in no way do we like take a vote and then that binds everybody. If folks want to do their own thing, then by God, do your own thing. That's a key principle, because we're all just here to cooperate. We're not here to like make each other do things.
So what would be really helpful is if we could, in the design of this, articulate a security researcher who wants to run this kind of query across these 3 ecosystems would be able to do it here, because I have no background in that. And so I wouldn't know that that's a use case. And once you said it, yes, it's obviously a use case. And yeah, I would like to hook in so that they only have to maintain one of those instead of 10 of them.
Yeah, so this is to kind of, this conversation might be good to have with the SIGSTOR community meeting as well, because that's what we're specifically talking about, is types inside of Recore, which is the transparency log for SIGSTOR. So I don't know if we'll want to balloon to all the hundreds of different package manager types out there. So we're just trying to find a nice way to address hopefully 80+% of what everyone needs inside of Recore. So.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Eddie. I think I was going to say one thing I remember discussing with you before was whether it would make more sense to have a separate record for every ecosystem type of package, which I think maybe a better question for the issue. So I'd encourage folks to think about that as well. Cool. All right. If we're good to move on, I think Laurent
I got one quick question. Hopefully it won't derail or whatever. Maybe a philosophical type question is, what do we all agree on what a package is? Like what package means in terms of like, when I look at the Perl, like I'm all on board with the Perl. Like it's the best thing I've seen in terms of options, but like for Maven, Gradle, Java ecosystem, a package is like a gav, and there are multiple artifacts that go along with that. And those can maybe be represented as like parameters, whatever, off of the Perl spec. But are each combination of attributes, is that a separate package to everyone? Or is that, you know, is the package just the first part of it and not any of the attributes, or is it something else?
I don't have an immediate answer, but it is something that, again, I think this group was formed to
answer,
facilitate. Yeah, was so that we could actually talk, because that's a question I never thought of. Not sort of like being as up and close with Java packaging lately in my career. It's not a thing I would have thought of, and it's like literally the kind of question that we need to sort out if it is at all tractable to have like a, I'm not going to say lowest common denominator, but like a minimum viable package definition. We need to sort of like talk about these, what I call architecture busters, things that just swing in and smash a wall, and to make sure that we can strike a commonality. Thanks for the question.
No problem.
Jason.
Yeah, sorry, I know you kind of want to move on, but a comment too. I mean, I just expect that, you know, having, you know, Recore support every package type and every variation of this is kind of like a non-starter, right? Like, I mean, you could try to do it, right? But it's going to be a constant churn there. I mean, the way I was envisioning this was more, hey, there's some basic capabilities within Recore and Sigstore, and then maybe ecosystems would, you know, hey, we're going to sign XYZ and expose those sort of things, and you can go validate those signatures, you know, using Sigstore, right? Which is ultimately what happened. Someone's going to do that anyway, right? You know, and so you know, kind of this general way to just kind of, hey, what's the bare minimum, and letting package ecosystems kind of, you know, supplement that, you know, seems to be like more realistic, right? Because ultimately that balkanization will happen regardless, right? And trying to keep up with all the various package formats and types is starting with that seems kind of nuts to me, you know.
Very, very briefly, yes. I guess I would frame it as we would be agreeing on a base type.
Yeah.
And then that would be extended by ecosystems that's made sense for them.
Got it.
So there'll at least be some fields in common, ideally. But like things that only make sense to Java, then it should be fine for Java, Kotlin, etc. to do their own thing on top.
See some questions in the chat. Does anyone want to raise those? I think we have enough time. Okay, let's move on then. So yeah, Laurent, looks like we have something here about NPM's best practices.
Yeah, hi. Hi, everyone. So I've been working with the other OpenSSF working group on best practices, and we have a draft for NPM security best practices with a focus on supply chain. And for anyone who is interested, we are looking for feedback and comments. So if you click on one of the links, the npm.md in the doc, you can create issues and add comments about, you know, what you think and things like that. So this is mostly an announcement to ask people who have an opinion to voice their, you know, their opinion. Okay, so if there's any question about this.
Very quickly, who's the audience for the practices? Is it meant to be like people creating packages or people using packages, or?
Kind of both. Kind of both.
Laurent, have you had discussions with anybody at NPM about this yet? I just dropped this into one of our internal channels right now because I hadn't seen it, but I was just curious if you're talking to anybody at GitHub yet.
Yeah, thanks.
Or are you're not speaking with anybody at GitHub yet?
So I think an earlier draft was reviewed by Miles.
Right. Yeah, Miles wanted to make this meeting today, but he had a conflict.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we can follow up later to talk about it.
Awesome, thanks.
Jason, is that an old hand? Yeah, okay. Yeah, anything else here? Okay, Laura, you move on to the second one.
Yeah, thanks. So another announcement. So I posted some of the blog posts that we wrote, that we co-wrote with GitHub and Google a couple of months ago, where we used GitHub native actions and SigStore ephemeral signing, like keyless signing, to generate SALSA 3 and above provenance. I just wanted to say that we're going to soon release V1 for creating SALSA provenance for Go packages, not Go packages, binaries created for a Go project. So if anyone wants to try it out, let me know. And I also just wanted to announce that if you're working on an ecosystem that is supporting SigStore, and if you're interested in exploring how to generate SALSA provenance, just feel free to contact me, and I'd love to talk about how we could do the same for different package managers. We've been talking with Dustin for PyPy and some other people for NPM, but anyone interested in collaboration or exploration, just let us know.
Any questions or comments? Cool, thanks, Laurent. So we are about 5 minutes left. I want to just quickly identify any action items that might have come up. One is we'll be rescheduling the EMEA-friendly meeting. I'll close the poll in a little bit less than 2 weeks and send out updates about that. I think it would be kind of nice for us to put together at least sort of a rough outline of the different domain expiry attack countering mechanisms. I don't know what to call it. Just some of the stuff that we described here and how that might affect the different repositories. And I think Miles has maybe some input here, or other folks from NPM might have some input. So I'd like to just be able to sort of collaborate on something there. Could I ask for a volunteer to maybe just like at least take our notes and turn that into something that looks a little bit nicer, sort of possible avenues of countering these attacks?
I'm happy to do that. Yeah. And I'll plan on working with NPM folks, PyPI folks, all of you all.
Awesome. Okay. Was there any other action items? I actually don't think we came up with too much else, which is fine. Okay, cool. I think that's all we got. Thanks everyone for joining. See you in 2 weeks at our new EMEA friendly time, and take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.